Hello, everyone. I'm Joan Dixon, Director of Student Programs at Gulf Coast South Area Health Education Center. And I'm here to you today with a very special guest speaker, Dr. David Klain, who is a retired neonatologist. Before we jump into the program and the interview questions, I want to remind you that we have several free student programs here at Gulf Coast South Area Health Education Center. We've got health career presentation that's video recorded and on our website. We've got many of these career chats, like what you're about to see in our career chats video library out on our website. We run health career summer camps. I work with HOSA clubs within the schools to help them prepare for their competitive events. We have a REACH public health internship program. And then once you get into college as a graduate student, we have the AHEC Scholars Program, which is an intensive 2-year public health program. Many free programs for you to choose from. And please note at the bottom of the screen, it has our website, my name, our phone number, and my email address. All right. We're going to get ready to jump into the actual program now. And the first thing I wanted to tell you about our speaker, as I mentioned, a retired neonatologist. For those students who may not be familiar with this particular healthcare specialty, a neonatologist is a doctor who cares for newborns who were born early or have medical problems. I found a quick video story on YouTube that I'm going to bring up for you and I'm going to share right now. It's about 2 minutes long, and here we go.
I've gone through this 1,000 times in my head. Whenever anyone asks me why I'm a neonatologist, I tell them this story. So it started in 1993. It was my first month of my second year of residency. I was in the NICU and there was a call that said, could somebody come to the antepartum service? They don't usually deliver babies there, so I didn't think it was much. So I walked in the room. There was an obstetrician who was actively delivering a baby, and it was emergent. It was so emergent that he didn't have on a gown or scrubs. He was in a suit. And so I didn't have any oxygen. I didn't have a warmer bed. I had absolutely nothing to take care of this baby. So I wrapped her in a towel and I ran as fast as I could to the NICU, which was not next door. It was a ways away. I remember like it was today. Kristen Ward, one of the nurses who still is a nurse here, told me to go to bed 3. She goes, just put the baby in bed 3. She weighed 510 grams. And that turned out to be the smallest female baby that we had at that point. Her name was Destiny, which I thought was appropriate because that episode is what made me want to be a neonatologist. And so she changed my destiny. I probably thought about her at least once a month since that time.
He inspires me so much. He says I inspire him, but he really, really inspires me. I hope that other parents can know that their babies can survive because I'm living proof of that. My name, Destiny, really suits from where I came from. It was my destiny to survive.
And it was my destiny to be a neonatologist.
What a powerful story to share. Gets you in the feelings there, doesn't it, Dr. Klain?
Yes, it does. Destiny is a very unusual child. She probably is maybe 1 in 1,000 survive at 510 grams in 1992. So she is truly unique.
For sure. And I'm sure that you have a bunch of stories to share with us as well. So I look forward to hearing those today. So let's jump right into your career journey. Now, something that I've noticed on almost every career chat that I've done is that no career journey is a straight line. It's a winding path as you figure out what you're good at and what your destiny is to be within these careers. So with the interview questions, we've already talked a little bit about what the job description is, taking care of babies born early, babies who are born sick. Are you always working in the hospital? And if so, what is the atmosphere like as a neonatologist?
Yes, neonatology is an inpatient field. All the patients I ever took care of are inpatients. Because all my patients are new customers. They get born and then they need a neonatologist. About 70% of them have something wrong with their lungs. The other 30% have usually something congenital wrong. So it's we stay in I work in a place called the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. They mentioned there the NICU. It's a unit that's specially designed for the care of newborns. It is a certain temperature. It's around 80 degrees. The humidity is quite high because temperatures are very lethal. Low cold temperatures are very lethal to small babies. So, and it's usually a large unit. There are no separate rooms. That although the newest trend is to make them in the rooms of 4 or 5 babies, but they're in large rooms, and it's a team effort. I think probably in medicine, it's one of the most team oriented of any field of medicine. Neonatologist really is a leader of a team more than he is giving direct care, even though I obviously do take care of the babies and examine them and write orders every day. The team is really the key. And the team is made up of a nurse, usually a respiratory therapist, often a social worker, and then all the ancillary people, the radiology technicians and the people that draw blood. All of them are specially trained for the care of newborn babies, and each thing is unique because of the size customer we have. They're very tiny, and everything's very tiny, and they're very prone to stress. You have to decrease stress as much as you can. So it's a very close-knit team. We work together very closely.
Now, some of the students who may be watching today may not understand what would cause a baby to be born early or to be sick. Can you give a few examples of what might cause that?
Yeah, well, as the babies grow in the womb, they acquire skills, just like you acquire skills when you're older. And the skills are due to our basic skills, like they learn to swallow, and they learn to move their arms and their legs, and they also learn to breathe. And breathing is the first thing you have to do to stay alive. And it with that comes a complex set of things that have to happen. One is, if you've ever blown a balloon up at a party, I'm sure you all have, and if you start the balloon, it's very small, it's very hard, and as it gets bigger, it gets easier. And that's because of something called surface tension. And it's actually there's actually a formula, P equals 2T over R. But anyway, as the balloon gets easier, it gets easier to breathe, because the lung, which is basically a large tube, the trachea, and then small tubes coming off hooking into little sacs. Little sacs are called alveoli, and they are where the breathing goes on, and they go in and out. Now, if the pressure in the balloons is higher than the outside pressure, the balloons tend to collapse. If the pressure is less, they tend to expand. So if the balloon is very tiny, and the alveoli are down and collapse down, you can see how much effort it would be to make them get bigger. So that's why what happens is there's a substance which is made in the baby's lung called surfactant, and this coats the inside of the little sacs and drops the surface tension, so that we actually, when you get all the way out, some of the little sacs are still open. They stay open even when all the exhale. You don't collapse your whole lung when you breathe out. There's a lot of air left in your lung when you breathe out, and these little sacs are full. And in the sacs, on the other side of the sac, the side of the sac is where the blood vessels go, and the blood vessels run around the sac, and they pick up oxygen into the blood and get rid of carbon dioxide. So there's an exchange that goes on, which is how breathing goes on, of course, because you have to put oxygen is the main thing you burn in your body. You know that without oxygen you're not going to survive, and carbon dioxide is a product that happens after you burn energy, and it has to be gotten rid of like a waste product. So that's what happens in these little balloons. So you're breathing in and out, and the capsules have it's actually a chemical substance, so it sits in the inside of the lung and it wears out. So first there has to be enough of it. With the first breath, of course, is the hardest breath the baby takes, because that's the first breath is a very deep pressure change, because it always collapse down. You've got to pop the lung open, and then when they breathe out again, the substance is lining the sacs, and then they breathe out, the sac doesn't close all the way, so it stays open. So it happens. So that's what's going on in the breathing. That's one of the main things we worry about in babies, and the thing that a lot of the babies have trouble with. And that's as the babies mature in utero, they develop this chemical, surfactant. And also they develop the little sacs. The little sacs have to grow. They grow out, they bud off like a tree, just like the leaves on a tree. That's the way the sacs are in the lung. And so as the baby breathes open, it pops the sacs open, and the air goes on, and the baby can breathe. And that's as the older they get, the more of this chemical substance they have, and the more little sacs they have. So if you're premature, you've got to do a lot of extra work to get the oxygen in and out because there's fewer sacs, and the breathing is hard. So that's what we do mostly. That's with premature babies.
Okay, so one of the main problems is the respiratory issues. Does that stem from genes? Is that genetics?
That's just growth. It's just physiologic. It's just if you're born early, you're born with a lack of the chemical and a lack of the sacs.
Okay.
And the nice thing is it keeps growing. Your lungs grow for a long time after you get born, so they keep growing, and you can support it. But that's about. So we take care of babies who are born early, and the babies that are born early have this problem. So most of the problem that we deal with is this one disease, hyaline membrane disease. Now there are a lot of other illnesses you can deal with. If you think about it, the baby starts out as one cell, and then it gets into billions of cells for a whole person. Well, there's everywhere along the line, if one of those cells gets damaged some way, it can shoot off the wrong direction, and you can have an anomaly. And so it can have problems with the gastrointestinal tract, or the arms or legs. Anything in the body can be not formed properly because one of these little cells got damaged in the way. So that's the other thing we deal with is congenital anomalies.
And as I'm listening to you, and I hear how very fragile, especially newborn life can be. So when we think about students who are, oh, I love babies, I want to work with babies. Well, when neonatologist works with babies who born early, may be born sick, may not make it, how would you give these students advice to be prepared to handle that type of situation?
Well, you have to accept the fact that you can't, in medicine, all of medicine, you have to accept the fact that you're not changing the course dramatically. You're tuning around the edges. So at least that's my opinion. And some doctors may have different, but we're tuning around the edges. So we can't change what's happening a lot of the time. So as the babies are born earlier, their mortality rises, and it's something you have to accept. And it is a tragedy. And I think for babies, the reason that I got involved with them is that they're so pure. When they're born, they're just without any kind of bad things in their makeup, and so that's what attaches me to them. But they're not like a newborn. They have limitations, but they don't give up either. Babies don't give up. They fight to the last minute. So that's the other thing I like about it. So, but when I first got there, when I first started working, which was 50 years ago, we had a very high mortality in babies. And as I've watched the field, it's dropped and keeps dropping and dropping and dropping. And it's way down now. And I don't know what the overall perinatal mortality is right now, but it's much, much less.
So nice segue into this, because I imagine that it can be either a very good day or a very bad day. So what would you say is let's start with the worst part about being a neonatologist?
Well, I think the worst part is having somebody die. There's no doubt about it. And it's cumulative, unfortunately. This over time it makes you sadder as each one. So it's just something you have to live with, and you do need to decompress at times. And the job, I know you're going to ask me later, but the job has very long hours. It's somewhere between 60 and 80 hours a week. So it's a job that consumes a lot of your life. So it's something you have to learn to live with.
You have to work a lot, so you have to keep working through the sadness even. Does the hospital provide you all with therapy to help you decompress, or did you mainly learn just to take care of it on your own?
Well, I don't know what they do nowadays, but when you're a physician, you're thought to heal yourself. I mean, they say you're not supposed to, but there was no psychotherapy for us. that we do have now, which I think is great, is I guess the saddest thing is when there's a baby who's just born and there's resuscitation. It goes on for a while, and then finally we just give up and the baby dies. And and everybody's just done their best. It's sort of a flat out race all the time. So the whole team is affected. And so afterwards we have a meeting of the team and do sort of a decompression talk. And usually and when I was doing it, it was usually run by the neonatologist. It could be run by a social worker. It could be run by anybody, and just have a conversation about it and sort of work it through. And that is helpful. And the other thing is that baby dies, but there's a lot of sick babies sitting around that baby who still need your help. So you can't just go off in a corner and mourn. You've got to get up and go back to work. So it's part of what you learn to do. So
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So then I think I know already the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What's the best part of being a neonatologist?
going home, when the kids get to go home, it's some of the kids have been there for 6 months or a year, depending on their complexity. So they've been around for a long, long time, and it's different than the adult ward where there's a lot of movement in and out. There's not, there's hundreds of babies admitted, but not thousands like there are in an adult ward. So those babies, it's a relationship you develop with the babies and their families over a period of months. So when they go home, it's just joy in your heart. So
I can imagine. I can imagine. And since you did it for so many years, I certainly hope that the joys far outweighed the
yeah,
sadness there. Is there
yeah,
such a thing as a typical day for a neonatologist?
sure. Well, there's two kinds of typical days. One's you're on call and the one you're not on call. When you're on call, there is no typical day because whatever comes up, you got to handle. But a typical day, you come in the morning, and the whole idea is you've got to set a theme for the day for everybody to work. They're waiting for you to set all these things up so that they can do X-rays, lab tests, whatever has to be done for the day. So you set the agenda for the whole day. So you make rounds. And usually in the rounds, you discuss, you go in and discuss with the nurse what's going on. You look at the data, look at the overall, and then I tend to call the parents right then. So it's just fresh in my mind, and discuss their child with them too. And we try to do that daily if we can. And then once the rounds are done, which takes a long time, it'll take several hours to get through a large unit. Then the rest of the day is meant implementing a lot of the things you decide to do. Some of the things you have to do yourself, like lumbar punctures and some tests like that you have to do yourself. So that's what the rest of the day is. And then you go home when you're on a call and rest because it's next day you got to come in. And usually my schedule was kind of hard. We were on call every other night for a lot of my career. So one day I went to,
My goodness.
yeah. And then every third night we move a lot of it too. But so it's as I say, it's not a job if you want to go off and have lost weekends. I'm afraid it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you mentioned that it could be, 60 to 70 hours a week. Now that's a lot of your time and that you're expending. What's an average salary range?
Well, if you get through it all, you get to get a job. It's about the starting job is around $200,000 a year, and there's all kinds of arrangements for them how it's done. Sometimes you get paid by the patient. You send bills. All doctors send bills to somewhere. Almost nobody pays it out of their bank account. The bills are much too large for that. But you write orders and whatever, and then that bill sets up a bill that goes to the insurance company usually to be paid, or the Medicare, Medicaid, whatever.
Now, to be a doctor, you have to get your 4-year undergraduate degree, then 4 years of medical school, then residency, and more years for specialization, neonatologist. So about how much education did you have to put in?
I don't really counted it. I don't, but you finish around age 30 is where you, about age 30 is when you end up, and at least that's the usual.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, I went to the Air Force for 2 years, and so it's a long road, and I think it's probably not bad that it's a long road. It's a lot. It's kind of you kind of go through a funnel. It's kind of a funneling thing. You go, and anytime in the time you might quit because you like where you are there. I mean, you can quit when you're when you finish medical school, you can just become a researcher or something and not go further than that. Then later on, you can become a family practice, and you can become, after that, you become a pediatrician. After that, you take your fellowship, you become a neonatologist. So some fields even longer than that, but it's a lot of training, and it's it's something you have to want to do. I don't think everybody talks about the enormous salaries that doctors have, and they do. I mean, doctors do make a nice living, but that's not you wouldn't do it for the money. I don't think.
No, no,
I
because
don't
it's a
think so.
serious time commitment
Yeah.
and
I thi-
maybe even pushing off a family. So yeah, it's not done for the money. It's done for the love of what you do,
yeah,
for
and
sure. Now, you mentioned you were in the Air Force, and I don't have a lot of guest speakers talk about that. When you served the military, did they pay for some of your medical school then?
no, I finished medical school and my residency, and then I went in something. I was in something that those days called the Berry Plan, which gave you. They didn't take you in the military after you finished your residency, so I went in as a pediatrician. And we only served for 2 years. And I was in the Air Force. I was at March Air Force Base, Riverside, California. And I don't, I don't necessarily think that the Air Force is the answer, but I do feel this is a commercial. I do feel strongly that everybody should do something for the government, for the society as a whole. I don't care if it was volunteering in a public health thing, but I think that's something I would like to see happen. That everybody commits to 2 years doing something for the society as a whole. But anyways, that's what I kind of conceive of it being too, you know.
Yeah.
So
And it may be a good option now because it's my understanding that if you would like to have money to help with your schooling, you serve and then the GI Bill can help you.
yeah, yeah. When in my fellowship, I was on the GI Bill because I had finished my residency, then to the military, and then I went into my it's called a fellowship. When you hone down from being a pediatrician to a neonatologist, that's called a fellowship. It's something different. It's a different sort of approach to things. And I got on the GI Bill for that, so it did help me a bit. So
So how old were you when you think you decided, you know what, I'm going to be a doctor?
oh well, my family's from a long line of doctors, so I don't know if I ever really showed my first toys were my father was a doctor, and my first toys were stethoscopes and tongue depressors and that kind of stuff. So in my household, the discussion was only what kind of doctor I was going to be. It was never never occurred to them I wouldn't be a doctor. And it was frightening in college. Was a lot of people who go into pre med don't make it, and I had no backup plan. So it was when finals came around in college, I was very intense about studying because I didn't have a backup plan. So luckily it worked out for me okay. But
You will be a doctor. I hear that from many parents that I work with now. They tell their children, you will be a doctor.
yeah, yeah.
Which
They didn't even say that. They just assumed I was going to. I mean, it was assumed. They didn't even tell me it was assumed I was going to do it. I mean, I've thought about it many times since. I've wondered if I had all the range of things to do, if I would have chosen it. But I think I would have. I think I truly is in my genes or something, medicine. So I think I would have been. So, but anyway,
Now, you shared with us that you started out as a pediatrician. What
yeah.
made you decide to go back and further specify in neonatology?
Well, pediatrics is an outpatient specialty, and it's very rewarding for a lot of people because you get this. That's a developmental thing. You see the kids grow up. You see them go. And that's the thing that rewards pediatricians. They see the kids go from a baby all the way into college, and they watch them grow up, and it's very satisfying for a lot of people. For me, I wasn't. It wasn't very satisfying for me, and so I was going to always be a subspecialist, I think. And at first I was going to be a pediatric cardiologist, which is a doctor who specializes in children with heart disease. But as I got into it, I got very fascinated with lung trouble, and so I did my research, and so I became at that time I did neonatology was the best way to be trained in lung disease, so that's why I did neonatology. And then once you get hooked, you're just there. It's just your life. You can't think of anything else you want to be.
Now, when I was reading through your resume, I saw that you've moved to many different states to practice. Every time you change states, do you have to take a new licensure exam?
Um, no, not necessarily. Depends on what kind of licensure you get. If you can get a U.S., I had one from Indiana, and Indiana is a state that has reciprocal agreements in both states in the union. So my Indiana license got me other licenses, and some of them I had to be sub-boarded. I got boarded in pediatrics when I got sub-boarded. There's a certifying agency for doctors to make sure that they meet certain standards, and those are called the boards. And the pediatrics has a board, and I passed. I took that and became a pediatrician. Then 2 more years later, I took a board exam in neonatology and became a neonatologist. Well, with that, it qualified me for the one my Louisiana license because they needed a recent exam, and so I'd been recently done that, so that worked. But yes, you have to be separately licensed in each state, but they have interconnecting agreements and make it a little easier. So
Okay, and I know that you never stop learning. You have to keep doing continuing education to keep up your licensure. Now that you're retired, do you still have to do anything like that, or do you do it just for the heck of it?
I do it for the heck of it. I did keep it up because I kept my California license active until this year. Finally, after 10 years of retirement, I decided I didn't need my California license. I never used it, so I retired my California license this July. It'll retire. So, but at one time I had several licenses because of all the moving. So
Well, that keeps it interesting for sure,
yeah,
moving
yes,
from
it does.
state to state.
Well, it does, and it teaches you different things. Different. Where you go from place to place. Different neonatal units have different areas of emphasis. Like when I was in Minnesota, their emphasis was on infection. They had a very heavy knowledge of infection. Whereas in New York, of course, was on lung disease. That's where I did my practice. And California, I think, was probably the nutrition thing. So they all do everything. I mean, not that they're dramatic. You wouldn't know it from the outside that they do it, but they do have they all have little areas of expertise that they do extra things in. So
And it's good for the students to know that you never stop learning. These are fields where you keep researching, you keep reading. There's always some new medicine, some new procedure, and you need to stay at the
yeah,
top of your field.
yeah.
And some students, they may say, Joan, I'd like to be a doctor, but it's going to be so expensive. And I'd love to remind them that there are grants. There are scholarships. Grants and scholarships do not have to be repaid, and there's plenty of them available because they need more doctors out there. And there's student loans, and everybody thinks that a loan is a dirty word, but it's a wonderful way to get yourself through college. How did you get yourself? How'd you pay for your education?
Well, my education was inexpensive in those days. My college was $7 a credit hour, and my medical school was $286 a quarter. So my parents paid it for it. I was lucky my parents paid it for me, and I didn't have it. I mean, my first year of college cost $1,000 the whole year with
Oh
everything,
my goodness.
room,
And,
board,
and
books.
now it's like $250 per credit hour or something.
Yeah, yeah. Now I talk about $50,000 a semester, a year.
Yes.
I don't know how people can. I think it is a problem, but I don't know what. I'm not. Yeah,
And
but
many of the medical students that I talk with at LECOM and at other universities, they do end up taking out some loans, and you don't have to pay them back until after you graduate and start practicing. And then students need to remember, you're going to be making really good money as a doctor, so paying back those loans is not going to be an issue at that point. It might take years and years, but it'll be low interest, and you can get that done. So we're nearing the end here, and I hope I
uh,
saved the best for last there. Dr. Klein, did you want to say something before I got to the $1
yeah,
million question?
yeah. Uh, the guy I trained with in the United States named Peter Ald, and he used to tell me because it was a long road being in training. I was 28 years old by then, and still going to school. And he said, when you get up in the morning and you look in the mirror, you're happy about going to work that day. You're excited. He said, how many fields in the world can you say that about? That you're so excited about going to work? And so that's everything. To be excited about what you do is everything. And so I think that's why medicine is an extremely rewarding field.
That's very true because some students may not have thought, okay, I get out of high school, I'm 18 years old, and maybe go to college 4 years, and now you're 22, but you can't retire until you're in your late 60s. So what are you going to do? 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you're going to have a job, and you better like what you're doing it because you're going to be doing it for a very long time.
Yeah.
Now, looking back on your many years as, in medicine, do you have a story that still stays with you to this day that you would like to share?
Let me think about that. I did think about it. I couldn't really come to the top of my head. Let me see if I can think about it. Um, well, I had a strange story. I don't know. I had a little baby who was very sick, and got sicker and sicker and sicker. We were doing all these things, and finally we just couldn't give it anymore, and we decided we'd quit. And we took the tube out of her mouth, and we are going to let her die. And amazingly, she started to breathe again and wake up. And we put the tube back in, and she went home. And I talked to her mother about it. And she said, "Well, it was very simple." She said she went to God, and God said she wasn't ready for her, so He sent her back to Earth. And so I don't know. That story always makes me feel warm. So
And I imagine, as a man of science, sometimes there's things that science just cannot explain.
that's true. And as I said, we only fine tune all this equipment and everything. Just fine tunes. Doesn't. It's not the essence of life.
If you had students approach you and looking for a best piece of advice, now I'm thinking about being a neonatologist. What's your best advice for those students?
Well, I would think if I would tell them it has to be it consumes most of your life when you're doing it. My wife understood that. I mean, we had lots of time. We go out to dinner, and I didn't finish the dinner, even though I wasn't on call or anything. They called me into the hospital anyway. Lots of things go on. So has to be something that really is part of your essence. That you really want to do it so badly that you can't not do it. And if it's not that much of a commitment, I don't think would be for you.
That is good advice indeed. And I would like to remind everybody that we have many free Reach student programs here that are available to you. Please note the website at the bottom, our phone number, my email address, jdixon@gsah.org, jdixon@gsahec.org. And I would like to thank Dr. Klain so much for being here with us today.
It was a pleasure.
My questions that I was firing at you. I loved hearing about your journey, and I really do believe this interview will give students a better understanding of what neonatology is all about. So thank you for your time.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And everybody out there, have a great day.